Welcome to the Brothers Dim. This week we're talking about the new Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, and the new Matrix movie, Resurrections. But first, I was listening to someone explain the difference between science and spirituality, and he put it very simply, that science is the study of things, and spirituality is studying the connections between things, or inferring connections between things, which is very similar to, what we talked about last week with that last Awakening from the Meaning Crisis episode.
I like when things are simple. I mean, that's pretty general, but it's true, right?
Well, science is like you study an object, right? And you measure it and you weigh it and you have you study the particles and you can break it down into little components. And so it's very concrete. And then spirituality, and I think this definition won't work for everyone, but I like the idea of the area between things and how things are connected, because that's not as concrete. When we think about the Charlie Day meme of, the conspiracy board and how complicated the world is, it's so complex, you can't get at it with science and logic. On a human level, we just have to infer things and feel them out.
Yeah, if I get too deep into trying to solve something for that or find like the science or the specifics to it, then it starts to set me back. Whereas if I just kind of listen to my intuition the right amount, I think I'm missing like bringing it into the real world of like implementing these. If I have like a big realization about something, or a new way to think about something, have a thought about it and then bring it into the real world and see how it affects my reality.
Well, picture it like this. So we have the conspiracy board of reality, or just the complexity of reality, up on a whiteboard, and you have two Charlies. One Charlie is the logical Charlie. He's trying to graph all of the connections and make it all make logical sense. And that Charlie loses his mind because it's basically an impossible task, or at least it's impossible for us humans. But then imagine there's Zen Charlie, and this Charlie is like a monk, and he just walks into the room, he looks at the graph, he draws whatever connections feel right in the moment, and then he walks away, and he's okay with walking away and not putting the whole puzzle together because he's Zen, right? I think you are trying to lean in that direction. Drawing some conclusions, you can glance at the board, but your job is not to put the whole thing together because you'll go insane.
Yeah, I think I lean in that direction naturally to kind of try and gain wisdom at my own pace. I had my mind's all over the place, sorry, but I had a fucking analogy thinking about this.
Well, hit me with it.
If you think about your foundation, your psyche, just your self, your health, as like a jungle, a forest, and you start out and there's little plants and it grows, and if it gets thicker, it's a healthy forest. And then some trees grow taller than the rest, they peak out, they grow taller, they're above all the other trees, they're, just kind of in the sky by themselves. And eventually, the forest grows and catches up with it. And what I'm thinking is when I get ahead of myself, like when I go down a rabbit hole that I don't fully understand and it's really not necessarily my idea, maybe I'm reading a philosophy book or there's just some new idea out there that I'm like, I don't get this, but I'm really curious. If I'm intrigued, I just kind of go full in, engulf myself in whatever this is. Younger, I used to be like, oh, this is it. This is fucking perfect. This new ideology is great. I'm going to fucking be this. And then a year or however long passes and I am like, oh, I guess there's some flaws to it. And or maybe I'm like, nah, I don't even like that anymore. That was silly or whatever. I just change.
That's you coming to your no monotheism moment of realizing that it can't just be one thing.
Exactly. So how I picture it is one beanstalk or large tree grows out of the forest and I kind of keep climbing it. I'm not bringing up the foundation. I'm not getting there myself in a healthy way. And so I just keep climbing this one and it's just going really, really high. And then I look down and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm way up there and my foundation, the forest and the other trees are way down there and they haven't caught up. And the fall is greater down into the forest. You know, I keep falling and eventually you fall into that forest and it's cushions your fall. But I think that's dangerous, I guess. It's like similar to like why I don't like to do, or I haven't really done any drugs or anything. I fear getting, another way to say it, to the top of the mountain, not knowing how I got there, or but not taking the full journey. I fear jumping ahead when I'm not ready for it. So I think the healthy way in the jungle is to like slowly, the jungle builds up. Sometimes you grow, you know, you climb out of it a little bit and you fall a little bit, but you have, you know, the rest of the jungle there to cushion you. It's not far behind, but it's when I get too high up there, that's when it starts to get kind of heady and whatever.
I think that's actually a great analogy, and you're setting up a bunch of metaphors I want to touch on. Like, obviously there's some balance here, right? Because you might need that one tree to spike up for a moment, and maybe you go up there and you get sort of a bird's eye view for a moment, and then you go back down, and maybe that helps all the trees. Mm-hmm. So like you need those sparks of like movement. And if you're too scared to follow through with one of those sparks, that's sort of like refusing to go through the door, right? Like Morpheus is showing you a door, and then it's an act of faith. Like, how deep down this rabbit hole am I going to go? And if you're taking like a psychedelic or whatever, it could be a million different things. They might be revealing something of the world to you. And if you're too scared to ever do it, then you might never walk through the door. But it's a real danger because we've seen it in our reality. People walk through certain doors where they completely lose their mind and lose touch with reality. And it was the wrong door to walk through. So it's always a fucking risk. Morpheus might be a Loki figure, or I don't know how to put that, like a trickster.
True.
You don't know. You know, you can't just trust everyone.
Yeah, he could be actually trying to lead you somewhere that, like you said, is a trick and maybe benefits him. Or maybe not on purpose, but maybe he's just blind and he thinks this is perfect and he leads you through it. And just like in the Matrix, after the first one, it looks like he was wrong. There was a moment, right, where he was like, oh, fuck. It was all, Neo's not the one. And I love that actually in the Matrix, because there's a moment where he was so strongly convicted of all this stuff and it doesn't work. And he just is broken. Fuck, I was wrong about that shit. And he's just a broken guy, but then he builds himself back up.
The other I mean, you're setting this up so well without knowing where I was going. So let's talk about this forest, or you were calling it a jungle. You've heard the phrase, like, you can't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
That means to me, if you're really close to something, you know, you're looking at the tree, that's all you're getting, but you need to zoom out to see the big picture and see, like, if you zoom out and you see the whole forest from a distance, it gives you the different perspective of, you know, instead of just being into what you're into, what's right in front of you, you just take that, I guess, that bird's eye view, zoom out and detach a little bit and look at it. I guess that's kind of how you get more long-term perspective. If you're like, all right, well, let me think about this objectively, and you kind of zoom out.
I think it's another way to sort of say that spirituality versus science, where science is probably studying the tree, but spirituality might be about zooming out and observing the entire forest. I mean, you can use that metaphor in a lot of different ways, but I think about it sort of in the sense of actually being meta, right? Like gaining a more meta point of view. Like meta means, it's like self-awareness. Like cognition is thinking, metacognition is thinking about your thinking, right? Like when you get meta about something, you're taking one step back and you're kind of looking at the bigger picture, which is going to lead us right into the movies we're talking about today, because I think they're both sort of trying to do this. So I think this concept of seeing the forest through the trees, or being able to zoom out and get a meta perspective, it's something that the new Spider-Man movie and the Matrix movie are trying to do, where you're telling a story about something, And then the next story you tell, you're zooming out, and that's part of a smaller system. First, you're telling a story about Spider-Man, and then you start telling a story about stories about Spider-Man or Spider-Men, right? Like that's what sort of entering the multiverse is. It's no longer about one hero, but what does it mean for that hero to be a hero? And they're going to keep going into the multiverse and sort of exploring these ideas of having a bunch of different characters from a bunch of different universes. But thematically, there's not a ton going on in Marvel movies, I don't think. And when they zoom out, I don't think we're gaining anything. I mean, that said, I really like this new Spider-Man movie. What did you think?
I loved it, yeah. It's so crazy what they did. Well, spoilers. Spoiler alerts.
Well, spoilers for everything. We're going to spoil Spider-Man. We're going to spoil Matrix.
You know what's crazy is I saw the cast, and it still didn't spoil it for me, Spider-Man.
What, you saw the villains, or did you know the other Spider-Men were going to be in it?
I only knew the villains. So I didn't see Toby, or somebody had said that, and I'm like, maybe he's like, I don't know. But there was Willem Dafoe, I think I knew. Oh, and I definitely saw Doc Ock, Alfred Molina, in the trailer. But I thought they were just like, man, he did a good job as that role. We'll recast him.
Oh, he's not literally the same Doc Ock. He's a new Doc Ock for the new movie. We're just using the same actor.
I don't know why I thought that, but that is kind of what I thought. Like his old movie didn't matter, and now he's just the same dude.
I mean, the thing I think what meta gets us in the Spider-Man movie, you had all these old Spider-Man movies. I mean, it's crazy how often they restart that franchise. And until this moment, they were all completely different universes, right? Like you're just resetting it. And this is something that always bothered me about comics. The characters sort of go through resets. Like there's not one continual canon story. Like a new author comes in, they're like, okay, fuck everything that happened before. I'm going to do a new thing. So the whole universe that existed up to this point, that doesn't matter. That's not really what happened. Now we're doing it. Like that always upset me. What this new movie did is like, no, not fuck that. Actually, those movies did happen. And now they're all happening together in one place. Like that was really cool, right?
It's spectacular. It's kind of like a miracle because there's two different studios that own the rights to Spider-Man, and just the complicated math behind the scenes is shocking that it happened.
You're right. It's a miracle to get through the bureaucracy, right? Because I would have just thought, well, business is going to win, not the storytelling. It's the business side that's going to win this. And somehow they got through.
It's also kind of beautiful because, you know, my favorite Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire. I don't think really anyone's is Andrew Garfield as far as the movies. Like, he was a great version. I like him. He was hilarious.
Yeah, but I think everyone sort of agrees those were the weakest movies. I never even saw the second Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So that means I never even saw Jamie Foxx. But what I've heard is, in this movie, he's actually good. And in that movie, he sucked.
That's true. I did see both. You know, I don't remember the plot very much because they weren't good, in my opinion. Yeah, but it really didn't matter. Like, everything, Jamie Foxx says, you know, how he fell into eel vat, and it doesn't really matter. Like, he's funnier in this movie than he was in the last one, in his own movie. It's kind of awesome that it kind of brings in, it's generational. You know, like you could watch this movie and you saw Tobey Maguire's and you're a nerd and you loved it. And then you have kids and they watch whichever one, Andrew Garfield, or they love the new one. And so the span of 20 years of people can all go into the theater, and it brings them all together so that everyone gets to have a little piece. And, you know, you can relate to a different generation that maybe grew up on a different Spider-Man, and that it actually ended up being so good.
The trick that Marvel has been really good at in these movies, you know, I never get like super deep themes out of them, but they're always really entertaining, and they seem to do all the characters justice, which is a miracle when they do like the Avengers movies and there's 30 fucking characters. How do you have any of them make any sense or be interesting? But they are. In this new Spider-Man movie, you have like 5 or 6 villains and 3 Spider-Men and all these, and they all get to do something, and they all kind of make sense. and they're all the best version of those characters. Jamie Foxx in the new one is a better version of Electro. Doc Ock is still awesome, like after 20 years. And Willem Dafoe, like, to bring him back and then make it even better, let him fucking take off that mask, change his costume, update it, but bring his amazing acting chops, and like everything fucking came together. It really is a bit of a miracle.
And that was the perfect role for Dafoe. You know, he just was so good at that Green Goblin villain. It's like corny, but so good. And that's the crazy part too, is the tones of all these three different versions of Spider-Man were all different. Like Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, they had a different tone. And so did Andrew Garfield's, and Tom Holland's, it's different. But even that they somehow conquer. Somehow it just works, even though it's just different styles of movies.
So what did you get out of like the relationship between the Spider-Men? Because, I mean, that's where I thought this could have gone to the next level. And I don't know that I got anything special out of it, right? Like they were able to confide in each other, and they sort of discover the similarities and differences between them. And that's sort of interesting, but it doesn't amount to like a big theme or idea, right? It's sort of just fun.
I think it does something that no other movie could do. Like the one that I'm thinking of is when Tom Holland's Spider-Man 1, loses it, and he's going to seek revenge on the Goblin, and he's going to kill him. And Spider-Man 2, Tobey, stops him from, stabbing him with his board and just looks at him. To me, that was just basically a way to symbolize, he's looking at himself. Like a wiser, older, or just a different version of himself who literally gone through it. It's just crazy. Like there's nothing you need to say, but you're just staring at yourself, and yourself is saying, this isn't worth it. And it stops him. Like there's other ways to portray that, but I can't really imagine how.
You're totally right. Actually, that does make it amount to something, because we've seen characters before where an old mentor has to, gone through some shit, made some mistakes, and then they teach the next generation not to make those same mistakes. But in this case, he's like literally the same person, and he can look at his younger self.
It's always, easy for the character to say, no, you don't know. You haven't gone through what I've gone through, and it's true. But in this one, it's pretty close. So it's like, what's he going to say?
It's hard because, like, in real life, this always breaks down, right? Like the older generation goes through some shit. They've got some lessons to teach the younger generation, but every young generation kind of rejects it, right? Like when you're growing up, you're like, fuck you, old man. You don't, like, what do I have to learn from you? You don't understand the world. And then you grow up and you become the old man, and you start talking to the young people, and they go, fuck you. You don't know what's going on.
And the other impossible thing that happens, which is, these are the two maybe saddest or most emotional moments for me, is, maybe you don't even know this. So when MJ in this movie, Zendaya, is falling to her death, and Tom Holland's gonna grab her, and oops, the Green Goblin's board hits him, and it's like, oh fuck, she's gonna die. And then Spider-Man number 3, Andrew Garfield, grabs her and saves her, and then he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. And then he's like crying and really emotional, and she's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm all right. Do you know why?
I've not seen this movie, but I've heard it's because he fails to save Gwen.
In the exact same way. So he's jumping after her, about to grab her like always, and something hits him, and she just dies, bro. She just fucking dies. And he's like, oh, fuck. How else on earth could this ever happen? And that's why it was so sad. Then he gets to actually save MJ, or save the girl, but it's not his girl. It's Tom Holland's MJ. And it's actually him, because it's also Spider-Man. So he saves the girl, but he didn't, and now he did. It's impossible, and it's the most emotional scene.
Redemption in another universe. Like, you're totally right about these two examples. This is a good reason for them to put all these movies together, right? Like, you're actually pointing out two really good payoffs. Well, something I liked about this, the newest Spider-Man is kind of the most lighthearted, and he's got Aunt May who is like really sweet and she's trying to help people, and so his heart is a little bit different, and his instinct running into these villains is not to kill them, right? That's the special thing he does. He's like, well, maybe we can save them. I really like that instinct of not killing the rival, right? Like, let's not just kill the person who's opposed to me.
He's Naruto. There's another example I can't remember, but it's a movie that makes the prequels better.
What movie?
The Dark Knight. So I saw the first Batman Begins, and I was like, not bad, no big deal. And they set up a bunch of stuff, and then it hits so hard in The Dark Knight that I was like, let me give that one a rewatch, and it made the first one more powerful to me. And like Marvel does this a lot, because like I didn't love the Iron Man movies, the standalones. I was like, whatever, I don't really care. But then, you see the Avengers and you see Iron Man, and it's so fucking good that you kind of want to know his origin story. And I still don't love the Iron Man movies, but it's enough to make you want to go see it. And like, I bet you hella fucking people are going to go watch Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man now, even though it sucks.
I was considering it.
See? And it sucks. And is it still going to suck? Yeah. But then it's a little bit better because in this one, he was honestly, of the three Spider-Mans, when they're all talking, he was the funniest. He was hilarious. So I was like, well, fuck, maybe just because I was judging the rest of the movie so hard, didn't give him a chance, because I was like, he sucks. But he's probably a pretty good Spider-Man. Just the script kind of sucks.
You're totally right again. So like, we're so used to this pattern of movies and sequels where the ones that come later kind of ruin everything because they get worse and worse and worse, and then I care less about that original movie.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have the opposite happen, where if the movies are getting better and better and better, it's sort of like zooming out and seeing more of the forest, and then it doesn't matter if one of the individual trees is not so good. It's okay that maybe the second Iron Man wasn't so great, or whatever one of the Marvel movies wasn't so great. If the overall web of them all being connected seems to pay off, it boosts all the individual movies and makes them much more valuable.
Yeah, it makes you more forgiving too. Whereas if this didn't happen, I'd be like, Iron Man, Thor, they weren't very good. I don't like them. But you need it now. Like, so you maybe you don't go back and watch Thor or Iron Man, but you needed them. So it's like, I mean, how are you gonna be negative and say those suck? But then you wouldn't have the Avengers movies that are like the most awesome movies of, the last few years or whatever. So you can't do that.
And they're even fucking connecting up to like the old Netflix shows, like Daredevil, like bringing him in.
Dude.
And you're probably not watching Hawkeye, are you?
No.
There's the new Hawkeye show, and Kingpin is in it, right? So they brought back Daredevil and Kingpin in the same week. So the whole thing is working together. It's crazy.
It's genius. I mean, as long as they keep making good movies, that works. Because you'll even probably watch a semi-okay Netflix series knowing that they're going to be in the next Spider-Man, if those are still good.
Another thing they can do is you can lose characters, which they've been doing, right? Certain characters get killed off. Iron Man dies, or Captain America retires, right? Like, you can have individual pieces conclude their story, and the overall big picture still works, and I'm still excited.
They have all these tricks. Doc Ock died, the Goblin died, all those fuckers died, and they're just like, well, this brought them back before they died. And it's like, whatever. And they brought in Doctor Strange probably solely to add the magic to the universe, so they can bring people back fairly easily. They could probably bring fucking Iron Man back, Robert Downey, if they wanted to some way, and you wouldn't be like, no, he died. He fucking died.
I mean, that's one part of these comics that I don't like in Marvel. When a character dies off screen, they're not dead. And sometimes when they die on screen, they're still not dead. Like, they just come back by some kind of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey bullshit later. Like, we just want that character again, so here's an excuse to bring him back.
Yeah, at least they do it, like, pretty well.
I mean, in the movies, I think they're doing it well. I've not been let down yet.
And, I mean, think about this. DC Universe, they're doing it. but their movies are shit. Like their movies all suck. So they're just doing the bullshit version. And that version that they're doing still works to make money because people want to watch Superman fight Batman. So sometimes they don't even make their own standalone movie. They're just like, now Ben Affleck's Batman and he's in the fucking Superman versus Batman. And Marvel did it way more long-term thought out, way better. I mean, more quality. In my opinion, I think they're better at making movies.
Would you be excited or disappointed when they did Batman versus Superman if it was Christian Bale? If it was Christopher Nolan's Batman fighting Superman, and so now The Dark Knight is directly connected to this new Justice League, is that disappointing or exciting?
Disappointing.
Disappointing because it's Zack Snyder directing the movie. If it was fucking Nolan, then maybe I'd be more excited about it.
Yeah, and his trilogy seemed to be, more like that's that. Those were too good. If they had maybe other good movies, good Superman that they made, I could be into it. But I don't think they were doing that. Marvel's been slowly, I don't think they knew they were going to bring Tobey Maguire in 5 years ago or whatever, but they've been planning so much stuff ahead of time, and they're just also making good movies. I think that they just hit the tone really well every time because there's always comedy in all the Marvel movies. For the most part, they nail that pretty well. And then there's some of it is emotional. So they just have like a really good tone that they can hit, and it just kind of works every time.
Well, let's get into a less reliable series of films, The Matrix.
Yeah.
Because like the tragedy here, well, I mean, let me ask you, what did you think of the new Matrix movie?
I gotta watch it again because this is a side note, the theater, one of the speakers was out.
Oh.
So like I noticed it like for the first, I was like, did they not put music in the fucking movie? And it was just really quiet and you could barely hear it. So I had that fucking going for me. But I didn't hate it. I didn't hate The Matrix. Did you?
I don't think I hated it, but it's the same thing, the same feeling I had with those first two sequels, where like that first one is so good that it's just disappointing every time you do something that's not as good, that's not as like clean and to the point.
Yeah.
The first Matrix, the theme is fully integrated into the storyline, and like each character represents an idea, and the way they interact with each other matters, and it means something. They're not just talking about the theme, you're living through it as an audience, and it's incredibly exciting. And the first one is the only one that's clean like that. All the sequels since then, I think they talk about themes and they talk about stuff that it might be about, but I never feel like we're living it. Like I'm not going on the roller coaster and feeling it happen.
That feels like the analogy we said in the beginning. You have to have the bird's eye view, the themes kind of well thought out, and you have to have the balance of also going along for the ride and just being there presently with one tree or with the main character, and to connect on that simple emotional level and the deeper meaning level. That's what they did in the first one, but the other ones, no.
I think that's why I'm disappointed, because like when we saw the trailers for this, it's in the back of my mind, oh, this could be terrible, but it might be good. And the thing that might be good is it might be a smaller movie where we're on board the adventure again. And I actually understand what's happening and I'm feeling the theme as we go along. And, I think we knew it was going to get kind of meta, or something weird was going to happen, right? The lens, the perspective was going to have to change in some way. And so in the back of my mind, I guess I'm hoping, boy, when they zoom out, if they can tell me a simple story that I understand along the way, and it's a wider perspective where I'm gaining new insight, I don't know, I got really excited for that. And that I didn't get that out of it.
It felt kind of like two movies. I really didn't like the first hour, the first part where they're kind of setting it up.
Dude, that's the part of the movie I like. I think it felt like 3 or 4 movies. And when I was watching it the second time, I'm taking notes, and I just had to keep stopping myself. I'm not going to write down all of my problems with the movie because I don't want to just take a big shit on it. Fuck, they did. Oh, fuck, they should have done that. Oh, fuck. So I'm trying to push that stuff out of my mind. But I liked that first part, and I kind of wish that was the whole movie. I don't know. I guess it just feels messier and messier the more stuff that gets introduced. Like, there's so many flashbacks and flashing to, like, we're never in the moment because we're always flashing to other shit happening and introducing this. And oh, by the way, Niobe's here. And oh, by the way, this happened. Oh, this, look over here. And some of the things they show you, it's like, oh, that's a cool idea. Oh, forget it. We're moving on. So I never got to sit with anything.
Yeah, too many things going on, too many characters. But I think the elements were there if they can consolidate it a little bit to make it a little better.
You've got to remove like half the characters or 2/3 of them to make the movie work for me.
But yeah, there was I guess a few extra elements in it where it's just too much. Like, it starts out and it's the exact same movie as the first one. Remember, like, shot for shot.
So that's the part of the meta that I was enjoying because I was like, ooh, how are we going to put this puzzle together? We're starting the movie in the exact same place, but then the perspective changes and we're watching someone else watch the movie that we watched last time. And they're also aware that this is a movie. They're like, we've seen this before. I know this story. And so now we're changing perspective. And so that was the little bright light of like, oh, I wonder what this is going to be about. And it wasn't about anything. Did I miss something? What did that pay off later?
That's how they found Morpheus.
Yeah, but thematically, what was the point of all that? Here's the best I can do. The analyst, who's like the new villain, the analyst gives a big speech and he says, no, my predecessor loved precision. His matrix was all fussy facts and equations. He hated the human mind.
So he never bothered to realize that you don't give a shit about facts. It's all about fiction. The only world that matters is the one in here. And you people believe the craziest shit. Why? What validates and makes your fictions real? Feelings.
And here's the thing about feelings. They're so much easier to control than facts. Turns out in my matrix, the worse we treat you, the more we manipulate you, the more energy you produce. It's nuts.
That's pretty awesome.
So I think he's saying there, like, they can take advantage of the feelings you got from the original movie, right? Like, that's why we're changing perspective. But that speech doesn't really connect to Bugs or any of the people that are sort of worshiping Neo or the idea of the Matrix of the first story. It seems kind of disconnected from that.
But it adds to the first Matrix. If taking the red pill and seeing that you've been a part of a construct, that happens. And then in that quote that you said, which now I'm remembering, is one that I really liked because I feel like it's more relevant to the real world today. He kind of says it is like, y'all don't want to unplug. Like, you don't want the red pill anymore. We thought you did, but, it looks like you like being lied to. It looks like you like being taken advantage of and emotionally manipulated. And it seems like the fucking more shit we throw at you to not make you happy, like, well, he says that you get more energy. But I like the idea. It's kind of saying, we showed you how to take the red pill and see society or whatever for what it is, whatever that means to you. But now things are getting worse and you're less likely to take the red pill. Now you want all the blue pills, and what the hell?
I mean, that makes sense. Like, the way it's connected to the opening in sort of reliving the first Matrix is they took that first Matrix and they turned it into a video game. They turned it into an entertainment. And so they take the thing that might be showing people the way out of the system, and then they make it a part of the system to contain them. Like, if that was the theme, I wish that was it. I wish we just got rid of a lot of the other stuff that happened in the movie to make that more clear and have the story be about that. Like, okay, they took the first Matrix that got us all excited, and now they're using it against us. Now what? I don't know what the now what is.
I don't know.
Well, I think the answer is a totally different theme, that, as far as I can see, is not connected. And this is the part I like the most. It's Trinity, the importance of Trinity, right? In this movie, Trinity's the one that wakes up. It's about her gaining superpowers at the end.
Yeah.
And the one is the two of them together. And so that to me feels like a totally separate theme than the first one. And so it just feels messy when you put them all together and you don't get to concentrate on any one thing.
Too many elements. That was a cool part. I mean, when she ended up being the one, to me, it didn't really connect all of it together, but that was awesome.
This does feel like two different movies, right? Like one movie is about using the Matrix against us. That's one movie. And then another movie is about, oh, Neo's not the one. It's Neo and Trinity together. And now we get to see Trinity break out. And that was really exciting. I think that was the most exciting part of the movie for me at the end. You know, Trinity gaining powers. And now Trinity can fly. And in that movie, Carrie-Anne Moss should have been the main character. We can't go to fucking Niobe and all these other characters and all this. Trinity's not even in the movie. She should be the main character, but she's in the movie for 10 minutes.
True. Well, it's the same theme as the trilogy in the end. If you just want to look at that theme, where the reason that he is successful is because of love, the human emotion, love. And it ends up the same theme in this one. I think they tried to kind of run through all the themes in the trilogy and put them all in one movie, Resurrections, and that's why a lot of it didn't make sense.
I think you could do that, but then there has to be a point to having them all in there. It has to be a part of a greater whole, the way that you could just put all the Spider-Man and all the villains in the movie, but then there's a reason, the way they interact with each other, the way it changes the story. There's a point to it. In this one, it feels like instead of bringing in different Spider-Man, we're bringing in all the different themes and putting them together. But then they don't mean anything when you put them all together. At least I didn't see what the point was. I'm going to have to fucking watch some video on YouTube of somebody explaining the movie to me. That's not what a good movie is. A good movie is I'm on the roller coaster. I'm not listening to someone explain to me what it meant.
Well, what saved it, in my opinion, is the meta part where they are self-aware that they're making a fourth Matrix movie. The studio was forcing them to make another Matrix because they own the rights. And they say this in the movie, instead of letting someone else just do it, I guess we have to do it. So Lana was like, well, we have to do this. This wasn't what I wanted to do, but since we have to do it, let's have some fun here. And that made it, to me, a little more palatable. This is the same thing they did in a much less popular movie, 21 and 22 Jump Street. Throughout both those movies, they're meta in the sense that they're talking about the bureaucracy of the studios. And they're like, oh, well, if this gets greenlit for, a sequel, we're going to have a much higher budget, adding the behind the scenes bullshit into the movie, which they did in The Matrix, which was really weird.
But it's weird that it didn't focus on that, right? Like if you're going to spend time saying out loud that Warner Brothers is going to make this movie with or without us, like that does seem tied into the theme that the analyst is talking about. The message is lost. Now we're just using that story to keep blue pilling people, and that becomes part of the system. But the answer to that is a completely other theme that feels disconnected. Like the answer to that is just love again, but we did that already. Like, is love the answer to the fact that the system can use our stories against us?
Wait a second.
I don't get it.
So that's the theme that you're getting, is they're using the Matrix, which we made in an effort to basically wake people up to the fucking system or society or whatever and just thinking for yourself. And now the Warner Brothers, the system itself, is using the rights to our movie. Well, I mean, in reality, they just want to make money and make a movie. But they're saying they're using it to keep blue pilling you. Like, oh yeah, The Matrix was cool.
Keeps you on the treadmill instead of breaking out of the system.
The tyrants or the established order or what have you use what the rebellions I can't even say it. But
I mean, I've seen it done well elsewhere, and I can't think of the example right now. But like of this theme where we get to a moment that feels like freedom, and then I mean, I guess this sort of happened in the previous Matrix sequels. You think you're breaking out, but then it turns out that's a part of a larger system. So we're sort of just doing that again too.
yeah, they wanted this to happen. Like there's a huge battle and you win and you take down this person and you're like, awesome, we won the battle. And then zoom out a little further and they're like, perfect.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we wanted. It was all part of the plan, that's the same theme as the second one. See, like I'm saying, I don't even know if this is true, but it seems like they put every theme from each of the originals, packed it into this one in one fucking quick movie.
But it felt like a mess. I think they could have put all of that stuff together into a package that was more streamlined, and then I would have liked it. But as it is now, I'm struggling to put these pieces together. They don't feel connected. Maybe they are logically connected, but I didn't feel it when it was happening.
Do you feel... Because when I watched the trailer, just with the special effects and all this shit, I was like, this is going to be fucking awesome. The problem was that I didn't care about the characters that were doing all those cool things.
Like literally the best action shots in the movie are in the trailer, which is an old story.
Yeah, they are.
And I too, because I'm not connected, because I'm not living the theme through the characters and on the roller coaster ride, I don't care about all the special effects that you're doing. Like you can have the biggest action scene in the world at the end, but if I don't really know what's going on or why we're here, I'm not in it, dude.
That's pretty crazy. Like I told you when I watched the trailer in the theater, I was like, Jesus Christ, because some of that shit looks really cool. And it was the same shit I saw in the movie. It was just as cool. But when you don't have the element of caring about who's doing it and, you know, that the story matters, it doesn't matter except for like it's entertaining. But without the other element, it's not like a Jesus Christ moment. It's just kind of like a little bit of entertainment.
Another way that they sort of talk about, like, so if we think about the Matrix being when your Tetris board is full. So like all the blocks line up and now you understand the world, but it's a false world and you can't get any new blocks in there. So they've successfully put you on the treadmill and now you're just a part of the system believing whatever's happening. Niobe, who shouldn't even be in the movie, but she explains to Neo that Zion was in its own matrix, right? It was in its own stuck system, believing that war was the only answer. You just had to keep fighting the machines. And that in itself was a matrix. And Morpheus, believing in the miracles of Neo, that's a matrix. It's an absolute that Neo will be our savior. And that's the end. I don't need to know anything else. And then she herself is stuck in her own beliefs and stuck in her own matrix because she wants to protect Io against everything. And so she'll prevent Neo from going to rescue Trinity. And because she doesn't believe in the love theme, she wants to protect the system she has. And that's her being stuck in her own matrix. But it's barely connected to the rest of the film. I don't know. I'm struggling to put all these things together. Like it feels messy to me.
I think you can't. This might be one of the ones where if you Charlie Day it, it's just going to get worse or something. Like I'm looking at it like some of that shit, you know, we just talked about, I was like, oh, it's pretty funny. They're going meta about the studio. And I connected a little bit to, like you said, that quote. And that was cool too, because it seems like people are happily taking the blue pill now. And so I got some fun stuff out of it, but I think that's all. That's all it is, maybe.
What did you get out of? So here's another interesting one. In this one, Morpheus is, you know, the character that's supposed to show you the door. But in this one, Neo has to create Morpheus first, right? Like Neo has some sense, and so he sets up that modal that's supposed to train Morpheus. And he's also Agent Smith. Somehow it's the combination of the two characters. And that is successful. Morpheus wakes up, and then Morpheus comes to get Neo out.
Wait, so I think I missed that kind of.
So Neo creates Morpheus in this movie.
In the video game.
In the video game, but that's the character who breaks out. And then he's going to go rescue Neo.
But that's just because he made the video game like what was in his head, like the movie.
Neo created the loop of reconstructing that first movie to wake up Morpheus. Like, they call it a modal.
Oh, that's what the modal was.
He made that specifically to wake up Morpheus.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, because I was wondering what the modal was, and now I didn't really think about it, or I didn't figure it out. So Neo made that to wake up Morpheus.
I guess what it's adding is there has to be a spark of spirituality in Neo first, right? He can't just literally be nobody and then Morpheus comes and shows him the door. There's something in there already.
He created the environment so that they would pull him out. What do you think about the whole video game aspect, that Neo's basically just a program game creator and makes a cool game called The Matrix? Did you like that element?
I think that element works in the movie that's just about that. They put him in a new Matrix where the first story of The Matrix is already a part of it. And so now the things that really happened to him, he's fooled into believing, oh, that was just a story. That didn't really happen. So it becomes part of the illusion.
You know what like you keep saying it, but it kind of feels like if you dissect it enough, it will all make some kind of sense, but who cares? because you can't really follow it just on a viewing. Like maybe the train girl, like there's so many elements, and maybe if you watch it 5 times or take notes, they connect enough where it's like, oh, I guess that, that connects, but then it's like, then that's not a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. What did you think of, they added this element that the choice was an illusion. You already know what to do. So offering the red pill and the blue pill, actually, it's not really a choice because we know you're going to take the red pill.
I don't know, because I was like, no, they don't. Like, but he's going to because he's probably going to, but he doesn't have to.
They make that point over and over throughout the movie in different parts, though, where it's like, oh, this isn't really a choice.
That theme kept coming up of destiny versus choice. And I mean, I didn't get much more out of it than just that. Like, all right, is this your destiny or is this your choice? And I don't know. I don't know if they made a compelling enough argument for me to like think about it. What did you get out of it?
I couldn't put it together.
It's just like, it was just a little sprinkle added in there. Like, do you think it was choice or destiny, or I don't know.
That's it. I'm just bummed out I didn't get more out of this movie. I feel like someone will explain it to me later, and I'll go, just like the Matrix sequels, oh, there is something good in there. But because it failed to work on me the first time, it's just a disappointment.
Yeah, does it really matter?
But I'm not saying anything new here because I think most people are disappointed with this. Like, the ratings are not good.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what it is. And does it really matter? We redid a podcast on the second 2 Matrixes. So we rewatched them, and there was some cool points, that we talked about, and we're like, oh, that's, at least they tried to introduce this. And there is some stuff where if you dive into it, you can appreciate it a little bit better. Like you said with this one, maybe you can, or maybe not really, who knows? But I mean, it doesn't really matter, I guess, because if it's trying to be an amazing movie, it didn't really work, to be like a Matrix 1. But I kind of think it wasn't trying to be that at all. It was trying to be not a flop. Lana Wachowski, I don't think she was trying to make a Matrix 1, but they were forcing her under the gun, and she was like, well, at least let me try and give audiences who like the Matrix a little something, that's not a total bummer. Like, as if somebody else took it over and just made some bullshit. She tried to do something.
That's a bad excuse, because that is easily solved by her focusing on one of the themes that we talked about and making a full 2-hour movie just about that one thing. And I pick which one, because there's a bunch of things we touched on during this discussion where any one of them you could have focused in and made a really hard point by putting us on a roller coaster ride that convinces us of something because we feel it during the journey. Instead, what she chose to do is take a dozen scrambled ideas. Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. Let's put them all in the movie.
I don't disagree, but if you're trying to capture a larger audience, then maybe that's the version that you would make.
But the first movie was incredibly successful, and it was about one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
People don't want hugely complex movies that are about 15 different things. Movies that are fairly simple do really well. like general audiences like simpler movies.
Who knows? We got to talk to Lana.
Well, I mean, it's a bummer you'd have to talk to the director to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Or here, let me ask you this. If they make a good Matrix movie, like, all right, you didn't like this one, maybe the Wachowskis do stop and then they keep, this is probably actually likely, and they keep making Matrix movies because whether the last one sucked or not, you have a good chance of making money because it has the name The Matrix. So maybe, what if one of the next 2 or 3 they make, one of them is good? Do you care about the shit in between?
I mean, I guess I will be thankful for a good movie regardless, but it's definitely not like the Marvel Cinematic Universe where it's like, a flop here and there. This is one good movie, 3 flops, and then who knows how many flops before we hit another good movie. And so I'll appreciate the good movie, but it doesn't feel like it's making up a greater fuck. Unless the movie is so good that it brings all of these elements together and it makes them make sense to me while I'm watching the movie, and suddenly I understand all of the Matrix films, which feels impossible. But if that happened, I'd be very grateful.
Well, it's a good premise. I mean, if they end up making, like, there's cool elements to it. Whereas if they end up making a good one that stands alone, I guess it's better than them not doing it.
I think you have to take it out of the Wachowskis' hands. A bunch of characters in this new movie, by the way, are from Sense8. Did you watch that?
I saw like 1 or 2.
For me, Sense8 had a really good first season and then not so good second season and a terrible finale. It's the same pattern of the Matrix movies where it feels like that first idea is really good and then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I think we need someone else to step in, which maybe you'll get a Christopher Nolan or maybe you'll get a Zack Snyder. Like, I don't know who it's going to be.
How do the Marvel ones, I guess they just know who to go to.
Marvel's crazy because they have dozens of different directors. Like, they have so many different people working on these movies, but they still feel cohesive. And I think people applaud, I think Kevin Feige, or who's the guy?
Yeah, Kevin Feige.
Yeah, whatever. They think he's the one that's keeping it all together, and maybe that's what's happening. God, is the whole Marvel thing working because of one guy? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe it's him, but whoever's semi in control knows how to put the proper comedy in it and to make it funny and then also have elements that make you care about it. So maybe they're just following a cookie cutter, behind the scenes, and it works, and they're hiring good actors. Because as I'm watching The Matrix Resurrections, I'm thinking it could work if they made it funnier, like overall a different tone. I don't know why I thought about this, but you know how Will Smith was supposed to play Neo?
Yeah, maybe he should have been in this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's the multiverse for you, but I mean, with somebody that was like funny, I don't know, the tone, if they marveled it and there was kind of clever and funny and not as complicated, we could have had a more fun time, but there was just too much clutter going on for us to zone in on stuff.
You pitched the correct version of Matrix Resurrections, where it's recast with Will Smith to mix it up. I want that movie.
Yeah, they got to just reset.
Then it's like we're taking it off the shoulders of Keanu Reeves, and we're saying it's not specifically him, but here's another guy who can be Neo. What does that say about this whole theme? Like, that's way more interesting.
Yeah, you could tell a brand new story with the same premise, right? Like if somebody has to be the one or anything. It just the premise of the Matrix and the robots, and you can redo whatever you want.
I think you make it about Will Smith. You keep a lot of these elements where Thomas Anderson is a game designer and Will Smith is aware of the Matrix. Like, you still have all these same things where Will Smith lives in a world where the Matrix exists and he has to sort of overcome this dilemma. It's like, on one hand, I'm reliving a story from a video game that makes it feel artificial. Maybe that's not the right journey to go on, but then he has to follow his heart. There's something to that story that even though they have co-opted it and made it a part of the system, he can see through it and he can get himself out of the Matrix. Fuck, I want to see that movie.
And they could have done some of the meta stuff too, where we know that Will Smith was supposed to be Neo.
No, that's good meta. That would be really cool.
Yeah, because Will Smith has made some videos talking about like why he turned it down and what was the deal.
Dude. And then you get to have Kurt Russell be Morpheus.
Yeah, right. Because he was going to do it if Will Smith was cast.
Fuck, man. Oh, now I really hate this movie.
Dude, Marvel got Toby, Andrew, everyone. They could have got Will and Kurt Russell and said, actually, let's do it. Let's just redo it with y'all. And boom. And then that probably would have been way better.
Oh, well. We're just wasting our time dreaming of a better movie.
I just do want to see Will Smith fucking do it, but c'est la vie.
What's he up to? Does he got a good movie coming out?
No. He's not been doing good movies, man.
Do you feel getting meta is a good idea? Like, does that... Because I feel like there's this great potential with these stories that you could get in meta and then teach us something new that's a little bit bigger in scope. And so there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I don't think you can do too much meta. Like, even in this one, and Rick and Morty, 21 Jump Street... It's peppered in there. You can't go too far. I think that's just in general too. Like, meta might be good for a second to get some perspective, but I think it's usually healthier to keep that pretty brief.
In your jungle analogy, it's the equivalent of like climbing the tallest tree to get oversight and then just telling the whole fucking story from up there and never going back down to the ground floor where you're actually next to a tree. It's cool to get high up at some point, but it's hard to stay up there and tell a whole story from the sky.
Less is more. You don't want to go too high.
Yeah, the Wachowskis are soaring too high.
They just gotta, climb back down into the forest and then go. Or fall off and fall back into the jungle.
All right, thanks for listening to The Brothers Dim with Nomano and Zero Marvel. I forget to use our names. You can email us at thedimbrothers@gmail.com. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That's getting meta. I don't understand why people do that. Like, you're listening to a podcast and then I have to explain to you how podcasts work. Like, that's pointless meta.